As every good athlete and martial artist knows, there is an intuitive, natural way of being that is essential to swift and effective response to the rapid shift of energies and opportunities inherent in each moment. One cannot play a good game of tennis while making rational decisions on how to proceed. A shortstop does not make a leaping catch, whirl 180 degrees while still in the air, and fire the ball to second base for the double play by pursuing an analytical process and mentally deciding how to proceed. The home run hitter does not connect with a 95-mile-per-hour pitch by consciously analyzing the trajectory and velocity of the ball, and calculating where to place the bat. A process of reasoning does in fact occur in each of these instances, but it is a superior form of reasoning that occurs below the level of the athlete's conscious awareness, with speed and accuracy surpassing that of even the most advanced computers. Athletes who reach excellence in their chosen sport have learned to trust a type of rational analysis that occurs almost instantaneously below the level of typical, historical thought. In the coming age, it will be not just athletes and martial artists who experience this, but everyone in every field. But from the coming millennium is full, such intuitive response to the moment will be taken for granted. It will become a matter of course. This divine dance of inner direction is humankind's natural way of being. There are times when it is appropriate for decision-making to be slowed to a mental level, but what was intended to be chosen consciously as an occasional option has become the historical norm. It has become the typical way historical peoples have determined their lives. In fact, human beings were never driven from any primordial paradise. Their decision to place exclusive emphasis on the cumbersome rational thought processes of their egos, and to ignore, and eventually forget, their intuitive ways of processing information altered their perceptual apparatus to such an extent that they could no longer see the beauty and wonder of the earth around them. The information that enters your awareness is subject to interpretation by two separate yet potentially, and prehistorically, compatible systems. The system designed to be your primary system functions autonomically below the level of conscious awareness. In that system, information is organized and interpreted by the spirit. In the system designed initially to be your backup, or supplemental system, information is organized and interpreted by subjective associations. This system, of course, is the one with which you are historically most familiar. Decision-making for the eternal spirits who chose to inhabit human biology was never intended to be dominated by sensory input. In healthy function, the incarnate being receives the body's sensory input only after it is distilled by the computer-like circuitry of the spirit's primary informational system. In the right hemisphere of the brain, sensory information is processed instantaneously, the pertinent essence being immediately projected upon the awareness screen of the resident spirit. The body-associated sense of self, or ego, shares this same biocircuitry. When the ego functions in a healthy, symbiotic relationship with the resident spirit, whose reflection it is, it has no need to think its way through the meaning of each and every sensory signal. During the early incarnations, when the first wave of spirits entered human form, the importance of the ego was not yet fully understood. Experience quickly showed that without an aspect of identity, specializing in the material plane and the requirements of the body, one of two things was likely to happen: either the ultra-conscious spirit, relatively insensitive to the frequencies of fear, would carelessly damage or destroy the body through some oversight, often as simple as forgetting it was incarnate, or, at the other extreme, the spirit would become so preoccupied with the unfamiliar nuances of material biology, that its consciousness would no longer be free for the creative and interpretative enjoyments that were its fundamental reasons for projecting the body in the first place. The solution, of course, was to designate a portion of awareness as a resident material plane expert, one who fully understood not merely the necessity of fear, for the angels understood that much, but also the mechanics of how fear worked. This portion of awareness, ego, would then prioritize and regulate the currents of fear that would inevitably be a part of any excursion into the realms of matter, when necessary, calling the resident spirit back from the brink of behavior likely to prove biologically damaging. So it was that ego and spirit, two facets of a whole, divided responsibilities between them and shared the same human body. In healthy function, their symbiotic collaboration is as closely woven as the twin threads of the DNA spiral. In the expression of the first incarnate ones, spirit and ego were so entwined that in any moment the distinction itself could not be made. Like alternating current, their awareness patterns oscillated in a configuration of perfect harmony. The ego knew it was a facet of the spirit, and therefore it shared the spirit's joy, enthusiasm, and understanding. The only times when the ego might become distinct, and such times did occur occasionally, were when the attention of the incarnate one became so preoccupied that the incarnate one neglected sensory input of major importance. When immersed in exciting creative projects, spirits often orient their informational senses selectively, filtering out some of their input in order to devote more of their attention to the project. In these cases, the ego broke in when needed. Its interruptions were not always dramatic, often it would merely remind the spirit that its body required water, food, or rest. While the spirit would dispassionately review sensory input with the clear-sighted objectivity of eternal awareness, the ego, on the other hand, proceeded differently. Its way of utilizing and experiencing the branching, like human nervous system, was unlike the spirit's. The ego feels the human nervous system subjectively, sensuously, slowly, and in detail, taking time to groom and care for the body and attend to its needs. Though different, the ego's and the spirit's respective uses of the human nervous system were both vital, both essential to a balanced incarnate experience. When the fall occurred, the entire human determination of good and evil shifted over to the ego's slower and more cumbersome manner of interpreting, digesting, eating the sensory input of the human nervous system. This slow, cumbersome, rational analysis of sensation played a necessary role in the ego's designated range of responsibility, but by its very nature it was subjective. Guided and directed by the spirit, the ego provided a valuable investigative tool for in-depth studies of a material nature. However, without the overview of the spirit, it became truly myopic. By nature, the ego's view of itself and its surroundings was partial and incomplete. Its slower but highly specified left brain analysis of sensory information was a powerful, and, even after the fall, fully operational vehicle for terrestrial research and development. Yet without the spirit's direction, it made no difference how well the left brain process operated. The mind was like a high-powered vehicle, driven blindly. A lonely ego, defining itself in mortality and isolation, lacks the scope and expansiveness of the spirit. When it single-handedly attempts to operate a human mind, it is like a toddler wearing the oversized garments of an adult. It feels smothered beneath something made for another and larger being. It does not have the energy needed to use such an exquisite biological tool. Without the spirit, the ego is capable of using only about 10% of the brain's capacity, and even then its observations and conclusions are often inaccurate. A mind that conceives of itself as fundamentally separate from all that it perceives, is an instrument of division. It can do nothing but divide, analyze, compartmentalize, and dissect. Everything on which it turns its attention is reduced to disconnected segments, while the spirit, the life of the whole, is forgotten, with the fictitious premise that it is fundamentally distinct from both God and nature, lying at the root of its thinking. It is not capable of reason, for its premise is a lie. This is why the historical egoic use of the human mind has been so destructive. It creates thoughts, images, personal identity structures, cultural institutions, and ultimately entire civilizations, that are based upon the illusion that the individual is fundamentally distinct from the ground of being, from which it and all creation have emerged. Only the spirit has the necessary energy, intelligence, and operational software to use the full capacity of the human mind. When the awareness of spirit fills a human mind, it is an instrument of unity, an instrument of harmony, an instrument of cooperation, creation, understanding. It becomes a transformational vortex, a channel through which universal awareness can flow into this physical world. As a component in the spiritual structure of the universal intelligence, flowing through humankind into the earth, egoic thought has a valued place. But when functioning in isolation without the overview of the spirit, its reasoning, prone as it is to fearful exaggeration, creates chaos, disorder, and disease. Perceiving separation where none exists, imagining itself, its species, the plants, animals, even the world itself, as existing in fundamental distinction, egoic thought separated from spirit is devastating to people, to the environment, and to the other life forms who share that environment. The decision-making resulting from human reliance on exclusively egoic thought has given ample evidence of its inadequacy during these past millennia. Yet until now there was no other way. The voluntary cooperation of human egos could not be coerced. It has required this cycle of historical education to bring your race to its current level of consciousness and egoic receptivity, when at last we can communicate clearly with you. Even now, your spirit, directed by a circuitry, is processing information outside the range of your conscious awareness, outlining your behavioral options and determining which among them represent your most creative pattern of interaction. If these intuitive processes were slowed and explained, if the many factors of which your ego is not aware, were outlined and their multiple implications shown, your ego would find nothing beyond its comprehension. The basic building blocks of instinctual logic are the same as those used by the ego's slower reason, differing only in speed and accuracy. Yet to access the deep intuitive wisdom of the life force, one cannot demand such explanation or interrupt the flow of moments by insisting upon a step-by-step breakdown of the spirit's subliminal analysis. One must simply trust and observe the results. Spontaneity is a rational process in the constitution of love. Its accuracy is unsurpassed. It is not clouded by fear-rooted emotions, cultural bias, or addiction to linguistically structured thought. The non-resistant superconductivity of inner biological computing organizes data at the speed of light, and with a clarity that complements the purposes of the children of the light. In the historical condition, instinctual input is ignored. The cultures that dominate human values mistrust it so deeply, in fact, that children are taught from their earliest years to fear their instincts. Young people intuitively sense that without help, their egos are incapable of effectively managing their affairs, and culture plays upon this sense. It distorts the truth behind this insight by teaching each new generation that since their egos are inadequate, they must develop a social persona, a protective veneer, an image of themselves behind which they can then retreat in safety, forever after pursuing physical plane relationships from behind a mask. Occasionally overtly, but more often through 1,000 forms of subliminal persuasion, issuing from virtually every culturally adjusted person they encounter, the young are taught that the development of a self-image is an urgent matter of grave importance. The sense of self that culture's children subsequently adapt is superficial and fictitious. If their former self-awareness was inadequate, they are certain that this new substitute is even more so. And so they begin their outward orientation, looking always to others, parents, teachers, authority figures, for guidance, direction, and understanding of reality. Often they stay in such outward orientation for the rest of their lives, assigning so little value to the inner voice of the spirit that soon their instincts atrophy, all but forgotten. Like the others in their sleepwalking society, they begin calculating their life values, using the ego's unwieldy and often anxiety-permeated processes of reasoning. Their skill at this is the only measure of success they are taught to value. To live spontaneously, instinctually. To simply be. To say the right words without thinking them out ahead of time. To experience the purity of a mind, uncluttered by troublesome and misplaced responsibility. To know exactly the right gesture, the right behavior, the creative response for each and every situation. Such are the birthrights of each and every human being. Every child comes into the world with his or her instinctual awareness healthy and intact. In the coming civilizations of the stars, children will mature not only retaining this ability but developing it, honing it to a fine art. They, and their societies, will live instinctually from moment to moment, as you are now invited to begin living. Trust yourself, your instincts, your intuitive senses. Accept the birthright that has unfolded with you, from out of the being behind all being. Human design has emerged from the highest currents of a supreme intelligence. It is worthy of your trust. You have been conditioned to fear what you might do if you were to act spontaneously, but such fear is based upon a lie. You are not evil at your core, not forged in sin. The universe has created in you, not a demon or a fool, but a magnificent, luminous being. You share eternity's creative power and all the wondrous beauty of time. You share a single unified field of awareness with angels and with the Star Maker. Should you fear the spontaneity that will reveal your beauty? Should you fear the expression of your love? To funnel your expression of life through the narrowness of another's anticipated response, is the beginning of death. You do so at the cost of your vitality. There is another way. Its essence is trust. Below the level of conscious awareness, feel the informational input of your surroundings flow freely in and out of your soul. Feel it enter deep within you, to be processed easily, autonomically, in accordance with life's design. When you relax and release your biology, to float in the uninhibited rhythmic currents of the love that animates all creation, your life force naturally organizes the data that flows through your center of observation. Masterfully, impeccably, it brings into your momentary awareness what is most important to your soul. Do not sacrifice upon the altar of your mind the sacred wisdom that rises with each beat of your heart. Do not let the grim priests of tradition tear out the very heart of the spontaneous currents that carry the insight of eternity. Let your mind relax in love and openness, until it becomes an altar upon which the Creator's consciousness descends. Spring bareback upon the naked energy of life, and ride its current into your decisions. The inherent intelligence of life itself will bring you understanding of self and world, and guide you unerringly into the future. It is far better to have a poor self-image than an image crafted in conceit. When the winds of change grow too strong for the fictions of humans, as soon they will, those with a poor self-image will let it go, and find themselves in God. But those who already are full of themselves have no room for God, and they will resist any change that threatens the illusion they have worked so long to establish. When you receive God, you receive the consciousness that precedes all manifestation, the limitless consciousness of eternal love that was from the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, before, beyond, above, and within all relationship. This consciousness is the greatest gift that anyone could ever receive. As you allow your life to be guided by the currents of indigenous wisdom flowing instinctually from within, you receive this gift, you find yourself immersed in the animating emanations of the universe. Upon the frequencies of eternal love, you rediscover your purpose. You remember your reason for this lifetime's incarnation, for taking on human form. You discover that you have access to an ocean of living information. Your access code is a child's trust.